Today we are discussing the real reason that God must exist and why it matters as we explore the final portion of the band Gospel of the Egyptians. And what we're going to find out is that God is not the kind of God that you necessarily think of as like the God in the Bible, but really is the self-grounding ground of all existence. We're going to see how it's possible that this God exists, what this God is, and most importantly, we're going to see that this God is what we are, and we can understand this through self-knowledge and coming to know through logic and reason. And this is the whole idea, sort of the Luciferian idea of when Lucifer offered the apple to Eve, that when you eat from the tree of knowledge, you can become God. Because when you know thyself, you will know the universe and the gods, because you are the universe and the gods. This idea that self-knowledge leads to apotheosis. So if you haven't seen the other videos on the Gospel of the Egyptians, you don't need to for this to make sense. However, if you enjoy what we're talking about now, I highly recommend that you watch the first video in this series, because the first video in this series introduces this God as this nameless, unspeakable being of light that creates the universe from its own light. Now, there's a lot of intervening things. Now, as the final aspect, we come back to this idea of talking about this great, unnameable, unspeakable God, this God of a secret name, but now in terms of coming to know that you are this divine light, that this divine light is within you and that you are God. So that's what we're talking about today. We have a lot to break down, so let's jump into it. Let's get right into it. So right out the bat, when we jump into this, the banned book of the Gospel of the Egyptians, this last portion here says, you are what you are who you are. Now, this is really cool. This one sentence here, you are what you are who you are. This is, of course, a throwback to the name of God. When God is asked in the Bible, what is your name? And I want to say in Exodus chapter 3, verse 14, God replies, I am that I am. So this is this idea, kind of a throwback. He's saying, you are what you are who you are. And it continues by saying, the great name of yours is upon me, O self-begotten perfect one who is not outside me. So, wow, let's see how much we can get into, because I can already see each sentence is just jam-packed with so much information. So the first idea, you are what you are who you are, and even this idea of I am that I am. What does this mean? What's going on here? Well, we're going to be taking a look at all this information rationally and logically, and this God as being the great I am is talking about being, or isness, or stillness, the immutable, perfect, unmoving aspect of existence. Now, what I mean by that is I am is being. It is something that is still. It is something that is always, as opposed to something that is changing, something that is transforming, something that is in motion. That would be becoming. Rather, the I am is the eternal being. And when I say being, I don't mean being like an entity, like, oh, that being over there. I mean being as in being and becoming. Like the still, like in the Parmenidean sense of philosophically, beingness, isness, rather than something that is transforming or becoming. So it's a stillness. So why is that important? Well, the I am that I am, or the you are what you are who you are, and this great name of yours is upon me, is talking about the eternal, unchanging aspect, self-grounding aspect of existence, from which everything else arises. So we're going to see that everything else arises, all becoming arises from being. All temporality arises from eternality. All contingency arises from that which is necessary. Everything relies on what is going to essentially be this self-grounding ground of existence. Now, once again, we have to look and understand why and how is existence possible. So we're going to ask, why does anything exist at all? Because when we want to answer the question of, well, does God exist? Remember, we're not talking in terms of like the God of the Bible. That's ridiculous. That God does not exist. You can prove that the God of the Bible doesn't exist. It's ridiculous and full of contradictions and logical holes and errors. When we talk about God, I don't like using the word God. I like using the word absolute. But we're talking about the banned gospel of the Egyptians. They use the word God all over the place, so that's why we're using the word God. I don't like to use that word. It confuses everyone, but that's why we're using it today. So when we talk about God, we're not talking about the God of the Bible or any of the Abrahamic religions. Those ideas of God are crazy and provably so, provably false. We're talking simply about an eternal, self-grounding principle of existence that is responsible for all creation. And we're going to see that that self-grounding principle of existence that's responsible for all creation is actually us. So when we go back to reality and want to ask, how is this possible for this thing, this eternal thing to exist? We have to ask, why is there anything at all? There are two ways to understand this. Well, there's more than two ways, but I'm going to give two ways to understand this. One of them is more of an easy way to understand it. The other way is a little more difficult to understand it, but is more accurate, is much more accurate. Here's the easy way to understand it. The easy way to understand it is that we can understand that reality is a mathematical reality, and we can understand the idea of the foundational principle of existence being equivalent to the number zero being nothingness, and then nothingness logically must exist because there's nothing to prevent nothingness from existing. It's perfectly balanced nothingness, and mathematically, logically, and rationally, zero must exist. Now, this is a perfectly fine way to understand it, though there is a much more important way to understand it that shows the absolute necessity of existence, not only that it is possible for existence to be, but rather that existence must be. In other words, that it is impossible for existence to not exist. Non-existence is impossible. Now, I'm going to briefly describe this, but please keep in mind, I did a video that's like an hour and a half long explaining this called The Answer to the Greatest Philosophical Question of All Time. So, if you want the full breakdown of this, because I'm only going to be able to explain this in like 5-10 minutes here, and it won't do it justice. If you want more about this, more detail, check out my video called The Answer to the Greatest Philosophical Question of All Time. Okay, but here's the idea. We understand reality to be a rational reality, and that everything must have a reason for its existence, and that we have to understand reality rationally and logically. Well, why is there any kind of existence at all? Well, this existence is a set of rational laws. Reality is, and Hegel, the philosopher Hegel understood this. So reality is a set structurally of rational laws, but these rational laws also are coupled with experience. So we have, qualitative experiences as well as emotional experiences, hopes, dreams, pains, loves, and fears. This isn't just a cold, calculating reality. It is a reality full of experience. But when we are talking about formally and structurally, it's a set of rational laws. Now, why do these rational laws exist? Why isn't there just nothing at all? It's because nothing at all, absolute total nothingness, as an absence of anything, that's not a possible state. That's non-existence. That state is not possible. The reason why that state is not possible is because in the absence of any rational laws, there wouldn't be non-existence, there would be impossibility. Because rational laws are the only thing that keeps reality stable. So if there was absolutely nothing at all, that would be a stable state. So you would require some sense of rationality in some sense for that stable state. But if we're saying there is no rational law, then there would be absolute impossibility occurring. Now, impossibility is literally impossible. It can't occur. So we have rational law that exists because it can exist and it must exist. There's nothing preventing it from existing. So I know probably this is your first time hearing this. This sounds like a bunch of, like, what are you talking about? Go check out my video called The Answer to the Greatest Philosophical Question of All Time. But essentially, in a nutshell, what we can understand reality to be is a system of reason, and we can understand this mathematically, and that reality expresses itself mathematically. So this system of mathematics expresses itself because it's possible that it can do so, because there's nothing to prevent it from doing. So the laws of mathematics are perfect, and since they're the set of perfect rational mathematical laws, they can exist and they must exist. Because there's nothing to prevent their existence. If they did not exist, then reason would not exist. And if reason didn't exist, then the impossible would exist. And that is, of course, impossible. So the idea here is that Our existence is mandatory. We have to exist. We must exist. And to really get a good grasp of what this means, it takes a while. So go check out that video I had mentioned. But I want to continue reading here because we have a lot to get through, and I want to talk about this in detail because there's some very important points here. It says, "The great name of yours is upon me, O self-begotten perfect one, who is not outside of me." Now, again, so it's saying that the great name of yours is upon me. This is a God of being. So this is a principle of eternality. It says self-begotten and perfect, who is not outside me. So first of all, not outside you, meaning it's within you and it is you. It is perfect and self-begotten. What does self-begotten mean? It means it has the reason for being within itself. And the reason for being within itself, if we understand reality to be a mathematical system full of every possible frequency, these frequencies equate to zero. So zero has its own reason for being within itself. How is it that zero can exist? Well, zero exists on the account that it logically balances to nothing. Now, this is not non-existence. It's a fullness. And this fullness has its reason for being within itself. It's self-grounding. Another way to understand this is through the principle of sufficient reason. The principle of sufficient reason states that for everything that exists, there must be a sufficient reason for why it is thus and not otherwise. In other words, it means that if for everything that exists, there must be a rational explanation or valid explanation for why it is the way that it is. And so this principle we can understand as a system of reason, and the principle of sufficient reason has its own reason for being within itself, and that being that the principle of sufficient reason exists because if it didn't, impossibility would exist, but that is impossible. Therefore, the principle of sufficient reason must exist. Its own reason for being is within itself. And like I said, we can understand this as the concept of zero as well, being that our full rationally structured reality we can understand expressed mathematically. And when you look at all numbers balancing together, this is equivalent to zero. So the great name of yours is upon me, O self-begotten perfect one, who is not outside me. So this eternal being, which is self-begotten, has its own reason for being within itself, and is perfect. Now, perfect does not mean cannot make contingent errors. Perfect means logically perfect. Like, for example, the laws of mathematics are logically perfect. Now, what perfect means in this sense is different than how we understand it colloquially. For example, we might say that, if someone makes a mistake, oh, they're not perfect. But reality is perfect, but not in that way. Reality is perfect as in the code, the rational structure that underlies reality, that contains no logical contradiction within itself. It is, in that sense, it's perfect. A way to understand this is by thinking of a computer code. Think of a computer code that was absolutely perfect, had no flaws, errors, or bugs. You could say that code is perfect. Yet you could use that code to generate a video game, and the code would still be perfect. But in that game, you could use your game character to do a lot of imperfect things. They can make a lot of mistakes in the game and die, and you have to start over again. You'll make a lot of mistakes. You're imperfect in the game, but the code is still perfect. It doesn't contain any logical errors or bugs. So in this sense, reality is perfect. The underlying essence of existence is perfect in that it doesn't contain any conceptual errors, and it does not have any internal contradictions or inconsistencies or lead to any impossible scenarios. So they're saying, the great name of yours is upon me, O self-begotten perfect one, who is not outside me. I see you, O who are visible to everyone. So do you see the difference here? In the beginning of the Gospel of the Egyptians, this great invisible God whose name cannot be uttered, the unspeakable name of God, we're just simply talking about it, that it exists. Now, at the end of the Gospel of the Egyptians, it's about how the individual is recognizing it, seeing it, and realizing that it is within. So it's a conclusion to, I have now obtained self-knowledge of what I am and what the eternal principle of existence is. You who are not outside me, I see you, O you who are visible to everyone. Why are they visible to everyone? Because God is everywhere. Because remember, God is perfect light. Now, God is perfect light, and you can create matter from light, as David Bohm pointed out, by slowing down light. You can create matter, light can create matter from itself through slowing down its speed, its velocity. And real quick, it might seem kind of like a little confusing. Well, hold on. Okay. There's so much that we need to talk about and a lot of dots that have to connect. So if any of this seems confusing, just bear with me. It'll make sense as we go along. So we just have things, because you're thinking, well, I thought you said reality is math, but now you're saying it's light, but you were saying it's reason, and this all connects. So, so it continues. I see you. You are not outside me. You who are visible to everyone, because it's literally God is everything, because we are God. We are everything. Everything is us, just expressed in a different way. Just like when you go to sleep, your dream world is you. Well, this external world is us collectively. Now that I have known you, I have mixed myself with the immutable. And that is so cool. Now that I have known you, now that I know what God is, I have mixed myself with the immutable. What is the immutable? Immutable is something that can't be destroyed, that is eternal. You cannot mute it. It always is. It's the eternality. So now that I have known you, I have mixed myself with the immutable. Because this individual who now sees God that is within their selves and has comprehended them and known it, now they have mixed them. They have become eternal because they've realized it. Becoming eternal is the realization that one is eternal. Now, of course, your body is not eternal, and you need to take care of your body and be healthy. But you, as an eternal mind, part of that divine essence, your subjectivity, that is eternal. I have armed myself with the armor of light. I have become light. Now, how cool is this? I have armed myself with the armor of light. I have become light. Because in this recognition of knowing God as a being of light that is everything, and when you realize that is what you are, you realize I am eternal being of light. That is essentially what this individual is saying. I have obtained self-knowledge. This is important. I have obtained self-knowledge. Thus, I have obtained knowledge of God, because the self and the God are one. And thus, I have become an eternal being of light, because I have realized that I am an eternal being of light. As the serpent in the Garden of Eden said, eat from knowledge and you will become like God. That's the whole idea. Self-knowledge, unification with the divine, realizing that you are a being of light. I have armed myself with an armor of light. I have become light. Therefore, I have stretched out my hands while they were folded. I was shaped in the circle of the riches of the light, which is my bosom, which gives shape to the many begotten ones in the light into which no complaint reaches. I shall declare your glory truly, for I have comprehended you. Once again, I have comprehended you. I realized that I was shaped in the circle of the light, which is my bosom. In my own bosom, I shaped myself in the circle of light. And this gave rise to shape to many begotten ones into the light. So this idea that light is creating everything. So, to discuss again, just to bring it back, we have to remember that we talked about the idea that in the first video, what is this unspeakable name of God? The unspeakable name of God is a mathematical concept. And we looked at that mathematical concept as being the flower of life. And we looked at the flower of life as being the concept of the eternal aspect of existence. And the important thing to understand here is that this is a collection of circles. That's all it is. It's just a big collection of circles. But when we understand what a circle is mathematically, we realize that a circle is, in fact, a collection of sinusoidal waves. Because every time you get a circle, you also get sinusoidal waves. The concept of circles and waves go hand in hand together. So the reason why that is because waves is just looking at a circle in another way. It's kind of like you can look at this pen straight on, or you can look at it from the side. But the pen is both things. It just depends how you're looking at the information. So this circle can be looked at as a circle, or it can also be looked at waves. The two concepts contain each other and entail each other. So when we look at this concept of a reality being perfect circles, this means that they're also a reality of frequency or waveforms. And of course, what is light in itself? Light in itself is nothing but waveforms and frequencies. So we can understand these waveforms as being representative of light. So we have reality being a mathematical form, a perfect mathematical form being a circle, this circle containing frequencies, because frequencies are another aspect of circles, and that we can equate this to being light, because light, we can understand light in itself as being nothing but frequencies, nothing but frequency patterns. And so really, what's really cool about this flower of life is that this flower of life, because it is a collection of circles, is actually a collection of frequencies. So the flower of life has often been shown in many esoteric circles and even like mysticism and whatnot as being the answer to existence. Like this has been given as the foundational pattern of all existence, a multiplicity of interacting circles. But we can understand this being, well, like, a lot of people are like, well, how can circles make up reality? Well, we understand that a collection of circles is actually a collection of sinusoidal waveforms or sinusoidal frequencies. And so when we look at the flower of life, we can understand reality being as a collection of frequencies, a collection of sinusoids. And when we look into the discoveries of quantum mechanics, we realize that matter isn't matter at all, but rather is based on waveforms. So we can understand reality as being constructed of waveforms and frequencies, and the flower of life being those basis waves and frequencies, those eternal waves and frequencies that give rise to all reality. And we can equate those waves and frequencies to light. So what's really cool is that the flower of life is not simply the flower of life, but it is actually also the flower of light. So the flower of life is the flower of light. We can understand its collection of circles as well as being a collection of frequencies, which can also be a collection of light. And light, as pointed out by David Bohm, when slowed, can create matter. And so matter is really just solidified light. As David Bohm said, it is frozen light. So if we think of all reality as being an ocean of light, matter, what appears to be matter, is just frozen or slowed light. And an easy way to understand this is sort of like the difference between water and ice. If you think of water as being like light, and then when water can condense and form ice, and that solid substance from itself, that's sort of like light forming matter within itself. So you have this idea of reality being these perfect forms of a circular pattern, which are equivalent to frequencies, which we can understand as light. But what's really cool about this as well is if we look at a circle and we understand the form of a perfect circle, mathematically, what does a circle balance to? Numerically, a circle balances to 0. So a circle is a perfect form that balances to 0. So not only is this equivalent to frequencies and equivalent to light, but it's also equivalent to 0. The reason why that is important is because that's one way we can understand how reality is self-grounding, because it is, you can think of it like being a structure that is so perfect that it balances to 0. And because it does so, we can think of this as nothingness. And so the concept of 0 logically must exist, and everything is contained within 0. Because if you think of all the numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, etc., 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 you have -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, negatives all the way up. So they balance each other up all the way from negative infinity to positive infinity. You have this perfect balance. So 0 is not empty. 0 contains everything, but it's still the concept of 0. And so it's self-grounding and contains its own ground within itself. So how is it possible that this structure can exist? It's possible that this structure can exist because it's equivalent to 0. Now, there's something else that's very cool about this, but I just want to re-emphasize that because this is a rational and logical reality, these things must exist. They have to exist, because if they did not exist, Reason would not exist. If reason did not exist, then the impossible would occur, but the impossible cannot occur. That would be like 2 + 2 = 67, or 2 + 2 = cheesecake. Like, it just doesn't make sense. It's impossible. These things can't be. So we have to understand reality as being a rational structure that must exist. This rational structure that must exist is mathematically equivalent to 0 because it is perfectly balanced. It is this collection of sinusoidal waves, and it is a collection of light. Now, what's also important to understand about this is the ability for this structure to diversify itself. And what I mean by this is, you can see this is a multiplicity of circles. Now, I want you to imagine each one of us is an eternal mind. Okay, so I want you to imagine that every circle represents a single eternal mind, a single subjectivity. Like, for example, you could say like, oh, well, this one is me, and that one is you, and that one is, Tom Cruise. I don't know, whatever. You pick whoever you want to pick. And the thing is that all of these individuals, all of these minds will have the ability or the capacity to come to perfect identity. And what I mean by that is, right now, they're all unique. So whether you're looking at one that is me, or one that is you, or one that is your friend, or one that is, God, I have so hard a time just thinking of, like the philosopher Hegel, or I don't know, Lady Gaga, or whatever. You have each circle represents an individual eternal mind. Okay. Now, right now, they are all unique. Why are they unique? Because they are at unique locations. But if you imagine that all these circles sort of moved and collapsed down so that they were all just on top of each other. If all these circles all collapsed down on top of each other so that they all occupied the same space, well, it would be as though there was one circle. You'd only see one circle there. If that was the state, and you didn't see what this looked like before, you would think it was just one. But the thing is that this pattern has the ability to be a unity and a multiplicity. This is why what we are is a one and a many, a unity and a multiplicity. So if you look at this structure, and this is a metaphorical structure in a certain point when I'm talking about it this way. But it's helpful. Okay. So when you look at this structure conceptually has the possibility of existing in a unity and a multiplicity. So if you take these and collapse them down until they are just a single circle, well, then everything is in perfect unity. And there was just one united mind. But that one united mind, that universal, can particularize itself. And when it particularizes itself, it diversifies. Now you can imagine it like expanding and each circle going to its own unique position. Well, now it's a many. It's a many. It's also a one in another sense, in that it is one collection or one structure, but it is now no longer in identity. It has diversified itself. So even though you have many here, when they all are identical by Leibniz's law of identity, we know that it is functionally one and functionally a unity, but it has the capacity for diversity. So the reason why I'm bringing this in and really talking about this so much, and I am bringing in each one of these ideas I'm talking about, I could do a 2-hour video on each one of these ideas. So I'm having to say a lot of things very quickly to try and condense it into a short amount of time and show how it relates to the gospel of the Egyptians. Now, the gospel of the Egyptians didn't know all this, of course, but you could see that they were very, very intuitively plugged in to getting in the right ballpark of understanding things. And so how is it possible that reality exists? Reality exists because it is a rational structure that must exist, because without its existence, there would be impossibility, and that is, of course, impossible. So reality is a rational set of logical laws. This expresses itself mathematically, particularly in the number 0. This is expressed in the symbol of a circle. This circle also comes with it sinusoidal waves. These sinusoidal waves we can understand as light. But this single unity also possesses with it the ability to diversify itself by simply varying its structure. And when it varies its structure and introduces difference, then you have a multiplicity. So what I mean from this, to say all this, is we can understand God not as a being in the sky with the beard that gets really mad if you touch yourself. We can understand reality as being a structure of living reason that is also has the ability to, from itself, construct all reality by varying its eternal rays, and also expressing itself as either a unity or multiplicity. And this is how we are expressed in our journey through reality as a unity that is exploring itself in diversity. That's why you enjoy meeting other people, and we all enjoy having experiences together, because we are this unity that has diversified itself. And so when we are in this world of difference, we're exploring ourselves in our diverse mode, in our mode of diversity. So that's what existence is. That's what reality is. Reality, if it was just, look, reality would be really fucking boring if everything was just pure light and a single unity. Yeah, that's going to be real damn boring. So this single unity that is pure light diverses itself into a multiplicity, slows its rays into matter, and can then explore itself in its various transformations. Now that's a lot more interesting, isn't it? This is why we're on this journey together. And this journey is about self-knowledge and understanding what we are, as well as having meaningful experiences with each other. Because the more knowledge of what we have of what we are, the better experiences that we can curate and have. So reality is both about having meaningful experiences and coming to knowledge of what we are. And what are we? This is what we are. This is what we are. And I really want you to contemplate that this is why existence exists, because a state of perfect unity and pure light is really damn boring. And not only is it damn boring, but within itself, it has the ability for self-transformation, and it diversifies, and it creates from itself. This is why it's called the perfect one, as the Gospel of Egyptians, the perfect one, the self-begotten one, creating from itself, you who are not outside me, even though you are who are in me and are in everything and are everything. This is what we are. Now, of course, when we did this and we shattered and did this as the perfect one, the perfect mind, we also wiped our memories of what we are. The reason why we wiped our memories of what we are is because it wouldn't be a very fun game if we realize if we just knew from the beginning that this is because then it would just be like me talking to myself. If I knew that I was everything and was everything and had perfect knowledge in that, it would just be like me talking to myself, and rather than having a genuine experience with another. Now, then you might be thinking, well, why are we bothering coming to self-knowledge? Because when we come to self-knowledge now, we can have knowledge of what we are while also being in diversity. And so we're not, even though we're coming to self-knowledge, we're not coming to perfect, total unity and self-understanding, and we're not at that phase. We're still in a very, very diverse state. And so the better we come to understanding of what we are underneath, we can have better experiences in our diversity, and we can take joy in art. And so this is why this is important to understand this, because right now the world hates each other. Everyone in the world, lots of people in the world hate each other because of differences, because of difference in sex, gender, age, race, nationality, culture, whatever. People hate each other. And it's stupid. When you realize that we're all in this together, and the whole point is to experience diversity, it's like, oh, wow, well, tell me, I want to learn about you. I want to learn about your culture. I want to learn about, we learn and grow from each other instead of hating each other. So anyway, it's important to understand we are a structure that must exist and has to exist, that can be in perfect unity, but also has the capacity to be in diversity, that is a structure that is perfect zero, that generates frequencies, that can be thought of light, that from itself creates matter. So then this makes a lot of sense in context. Remember, the great name of yours is upon me, self-begotten, perfect one, rationally, structurally perfect, creates from itself. He who is not outside me, because it's within. I see you. It's also everywhere without. Now that I have known you, I have mixed myself with the immutable. I realize I am eternal. I have armed myself with an armor of light. I have become light. I realize that I am light. I was shaped in the circle of the riches of the light, which is in my bosom, which gave shape to the many begotten ones in the light. So self-shaping, shaping within the light. I shall declare your glory truly, for I have comprehended you. I now understand what you are. O Eon, Eon, O God of silence, I honor you completely. You are my place of rest, the formless one who exists in the formless one. Now remember, again, this is not any sort of material God. This is not a God with a body, who exists, raising up the man in whom you will purify me into your life, according to your imperishable name. Therefore, the incense of life is in me. I mixed it with the water after the model of all archons, in order that I may live with you in the peace of the saints, you who exist really, truly forever. Just more about understanding the architect of existence. So this is a really interesting point. This is the book which with the great Seth wrote. So they're saying that, now, if you haven't seen the other videos, you're probably like, who the hell is Seth? Watch the other videos in this series if you want to know who Seth is. Seth is a character that represents humanity's ability to have self-knowledge of what they are. So they're saying this is the book which the great Seth wrote. So basically, Seth obviously didn't literally write this, but this was written and authored by a principle of self-awareness, of self-knowledge. And Seth placed it in the high mountains on which the sun has not risen, nor is it possible that it should do so. What does this mean? Placed it in the high mountains on which the sun has not risen. To understand this book, in the high mountains requires a higher consciousness, but the sun has not risen there yet. The light hasn't gotten there. The light of understanding of humanity has not reached it yet. So this book exists in the high mountains. You have to have a higher consciousness to understand it. It's outside the light of humanity's consciousness. And since the days of the prophets and the apostles and the preachers, the name has not at all risen upon their hearts, nor is it possible that it should do so, and their ear has not heard. In other words, this book is in a high mountain where the sun has not yet written, and all the prophets and the apostles and the preachers, they have not heard this. They can't understand it. The sun has not risen for them. They have not reached that mountain. And the name has not risen in their hearts, nor is it possible. So they're saying all the preachers, all the prophets, all the apostles, this is unreachable. This exists in a consciousness that they can't comprehend, nor will they ever comprehend. This is what they're saying. The great Seth wrote the book with letters in 130 years. He placed it in the mountain that is called Caraxio, in order that at the end of the time in the eras, by the will of the divine Autogenes and the whole Pleroma, the Autogenes is the self-begotten, the self-generated, so the principle of existence, the holy invisible spirit, the great one, the eternal. So what we are. And the whole Pleroma, the Pleroma is divine realm of light, the perfect realm. Through the gift of the untraceable, unthinkable, fatherly love, it may came forth and reveal this incorruptible, holy race of the great Savior and those who dwell with them in love, and the great invisible eternal spirit and his only begotten son, and the eternal light and his great incorruptible consort, and the incorruptible Sophia, and the Babylon, and the whole Pleroma in eternity. Amen. And in a sense, this is still just going into detail about, just being very climactic about how Seth created this book. It requires a higher consciousness to understand it. The preachers and pastors and apostles and all of them, they don't have the ability to understand this, but it will be understood by those who have that capacity for self-knowledge and self-understanding. And it just closes by saying, the gospel of the Egyptians, the God-written holy secret book, grace, understanding, perception, and prudence be with him who has written it. My name is Gongesos, and my fellow light is in incorruptibility. Jesus Christ, Son of God, Savior, Ichthys, God written, is the holy book of the great invisible spirit. Amen. The holy book of the great invisible spirit. Amen. So a really cool climactic ending where we begin with this description of this unspeakable, nameless God, or the name that cannot be uttered, the name that is a secret, invisible symbol. Then we go through the journey throughout this gospel where it talks about Seth, the one who is capable of understanding self-knowledge, and how the forces of ignorance are trying to stop humanity from understanding what they are. And then it concludes with this individual talking about how now they understand God and that they are becoming eternal, that they are now a being of light, and they have realized that what God is and have come to self-knowledge and realized that they are truly eternal and divine. So it's important to see how we can understand all of this and understand this through an analysis of reason. And that's the thing, is when we come to understand these ideas, we have to understand them logically and rationally, not through faith, and not even through story. Like, these stories are great and they're super cool, but this is why I show all this other information as well, because it's to show that we don't want to just have faith and what these books are talking about, but rather we want to have our foundation of understanding the structure of reality based on reason. And that's really important. You know, people ask, like, how do you know what things are true and what are not true? You have to be able to base your information on reason, and we can rationally come to an understanding of what we are, where we are, why we are here. That is that forbidden fruit of knowledge, but we have eaten from it, we have partaken, and have come to self-knowledge of what we are, true beings of frequencies, beings of light, creators, those who have constructed this world, and now, through this world that we have constructed, are exploring ourselves together in our diversity. And in our diversity, when we come to self-knowledge of what we are, we have the power to create this world into the kingdom of heaven on earth, into a world that is a thriving, beautiful world where we celebrate our diversity. And that is our will. And that is what we create. So as always, my friends, check out my other videos. There's a lot more to this. If any of this sounded confusing, check out all the other videos in this series. I have a lot more videos on Gnosticism and a video on pretty much everything that I touched on. I had to try and fit so much in a very small amount of time. So check that out. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my work. We have a lot of interesting things coming out. And as always, if you feel like you've ever gotten something from my work, support on Patreon. Patreon is how I'm able to create and do these videos. So support there. You'll get access to secret videos, secret live streams, and our Discord community. It helps out a lot. And I want to give a shout out to everyone who does support, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Maria, Joel, Fairies of Venus, and everyone else. You can also help out by hitting the join button right below this video.